Hello, hello. Today we are going to just do a fun little loosening up activity, a warming up activity, getting to know your supplies. This is the first time you're using watercolors or you're fairly new and you're still nervous about it. This will be a great, just fun little activity. If you feel blocked creatively, again, we're going to do this. Essentially, we're going to be doing these mindful doodles where I'm hoping it relaxes you. I'm hoping it loosens you up. And because we aren't trying to create a specific object, like if I'm trying to draw this exactly as is, that already puts you in a place of, oh gosh, I don't know if I can get that exactly right. Well, we're going to take that pressure off today and we're just going to play. Essentially, we're going to be doing an inquiry into our supplies and shapes. We're going to be working with shapes and mark making. So you are going to need some paper. And if you're working with watercolors, try to get a little bit heavier paper. If not, use less water. That's okay. You can adjust, right? I'm going to be using watercolors, but you can use markers. I'm using my water brush. You can use just a regular brush with a jar of water. And I'm just going to be grabbing some Sharpies and maybe a ballpoint pen, something to do some finer mark making with. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to start off by taking this big piece of paper and saying, no way. That's way too scary, right? Well, maybe it's not scary, but maybe it's a little intimidating to fill that big page. So we're going to create these little squares, these little canvases. By doing that, I'm just going to fold my paper and I'm going to cut it. You can cut or tear. You can take from your sketchbook, just tear out a piece of paper. I'm just going to cut this right down the middle. And still, I feel these are a little too big. I'm going to make them even smaller. There's nothing like making little miniature canvases. Less pressure. And things tend to be really cute when they get small, right? Little puppies, little kittens. I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion about that. But regardless, I am making smaller canvases so it takes the pressure off and is more inviting to our creative process. So we're not already just, that's a big piece of paper. I don't know what to put on it. I have no ideas. I'm not skilled enough. There's a lot of negative self-talk, but that negative self-talk, don't be afraid of that. Just notice it and know that it's part of this creative process of finding yourself and finding how you want to express yourself. And it's this internal battle that feels uncomfortable, but don't be afraid of that feeling of uncomfortableness, okay? It's part of every artist goes through it. I'm going to make these even smaller one more time. And cut. And I won't do all of these, but I'll just do a couple to get you started. But you can do as many as you would like. This is a great practice for when you want to do some art, but you don't know what to do. This is a great warm-up. Also, when you are doing this and you begin mark making, just pay attention to any inspiration that comes along. That's something that you might want to investigate further, that you want to make bigger, a bigger piece. I am going to start off, you see my samples over here. I'm going to start off by actually, I know I already made these smaller, but I'm going to make I'm going to draw a ink border inside of it to really define the space that I'm going to play in, to investigate. And this is going to take some pressure off. Noticing I'm not using a ruler, I am not needing these to be perfect. Again, this is a messy process. It is supposed to be. And your hand will gain more control the more you do it, but don't worry. I mean, look at these wonky borders. It makes it whimsy and fun. And it's your signature, right? It's your own hand making these wonky marks. Celebrate it. No one else is gonna make those like you. Okay, drawing borders on all of these. And my pen skipped, but I'm just gonna leave it. I'm going with it. Okay, so I'm gonna take one of these, set the rest of these aside, and I'm gonna take my water brush. And I'm going to think about first playing with some watercolors, and I'm not creating anything that is based on realism. I am just going to play with shapes that we all learned when we were little kids that we continue to see. Like here, I've done squares and rectangles. I've done triangles. I've done circles. We're just gonna play with some basic shapes. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick a color that I am really drawn to. Today, this morning, for some reason, I'm really drawn to these brighter colors. So I'm gonna water these things up. And I was playing earlier, so I need to clean that up. I don't want that to be muddy. Okay, my palette. And I am just, for right now, I am not thinking about anything in particular. If it helps you to look at my samples and create something similar to mine, do that. If not, just play and have fun. Like, I feel like making spirals. And so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna take my paint, and I'm gonna make some spirals. And I'm gonna switch up the colors, and I'm not gonna be too careful about cleaning off my brush entirely because maybe I discover a new color. And I'm gonna let them overlap. And this allows you to say, hey, I want a darker one, so I'm gonna put more pigment on my brush. And this is just getting you to loosen up, to get to know your supplies without having the pressure of, I'm supposed to paint this beautiful rose with these watercolors, and that is terrifying. No worries. And I'm just gonna go and fill this until I feel I've filled the frame. And some of these spirals are odd, and some of these spirals are pretty good. Good being my judgment of them, not anyone else's. Now, I filled that. I'm going to let the paint run together. I'm gonna let this dry by setting it aside, and I can come back to it and add some more later. Now I am going to do just blots, repetitive blots of paint. And maybe I will make a pattern out of this, maybe I won't, but what I want you to do is get comfortable with, this feels good making them in a straight line. Maybe you are swayed to randomly put them all over these little frames, these little canvases. Do that. Get comfortable listening to that intuitive voice inside of you, those urgings to take your art in directions where you're curious about. Follow that curiosity, because that's going to lead you to how you want to express yourself. And it may not always turn out. In fact, it's not always going to turn out how you think you want it. You're going to make a lot of bad art, but that is necessary. It's necessary, so don't be afraid. I'm going to go into the greens here, and I'm just repetitively making lines. And this is also helping me know how much water to put on my paints, and it's also, or put in my pigment. And then if I want them darker, I can go back and add more green pigment to this. And I'm playing around and getting to know my supplies by also loosening up and practicing mark making on a page, like exercises of like whether you're learning to be a drummer, you're practicing paradiddles or scales. You got to get to know your tools here and how it reacts to different papers, to how much water is used on there, and soon it becomes like pretty intuitive after a while, but you've got to make messes and make a lot of mistakes before you can get to that place. And that's okay. You're supposed to, and that's like with anything, right? Again, following your whims, and like mine was, hey, I want to darken those up, so I'm going to do it. I'm really not thinking why or investigating why I want to do that. I just do. Okay, now I'm going to move on to some, what do I feel like? So trying to tap into that whimsy place. I'm going to do some circles. I want to do some circles. And I want to start off by doing some yellow ones, polka dots. And then I'm going to switch it up and I'm going to do some orange. And I am working fast because I'm just allowing that intuition to I'm just playing. I'm just experimenting. I'm investigating. There's a question I have in my mind about what would happen if I took some pink and started to overlap. That looks pretty cool. It may or may not work out, but who cares? We're supposed to be experimenting. And that is becoming more orange or red. I think what I will do is, I like the idea of overlapping. It's interesting. Now I'm purposely getting messy and smearing these together. Okay. All right, I'm gonna let that sit. Clean off my brush, dab, dab, dab. The other thing, I mean, you can do as many as these ones. I'm just gonna do just a few here, and I did some earlier because after we let them dry, there's some other things that we can do. So you can do squares, you can do triangles, you can do squares and triangles and circles. Try combining really basic shapes. Your job is just to fill these little canvases, following that little curious, creative voice inside of you, and let those questions emerge. What would happen if? What if I filled the page with? What if I combined circles and squares? What if I smeared some paint? I don't try it, see what happens, right? Okay, so I'm gonna set that aside. Once you have some and you're letting them dry, you can go back over. I'm gonna switch this out. So this is one I did earlier and there's still a wet one, but that's okay. You can actually go back over and do more, ooh, I wanna do like blue, I think. Do another layer. So now that that first layer has dried, I can actually go back over and overlap them, and that first one is gonna pretty much stay in place. Where on my wet on wet one, the colors ran together. Do a small one. Purposely go over that. And then again, let yourself ask those questions. What if I did this? What would happen if I added darker blue? What would happen if I started right on that one? What would that look like? And this is actually looking pretty cool. In fact, I may want to answer the question, what would happen if I filled a larger canvas with overlapping dots like this? What would happen if I let this dry and then I came back and added yet another layer with a different color and I made it even bigger? That would be pretty cool. So I'm gonna let that sit and let that dry. Again, this is one I did with you. I can go back in and again add layers on top and make it layer upon layer. What would happen if I just kept adding layers to this thing, right? It would look pretty cool. And then if it doesn't, you found out when to stop, when too much was too much. And the only way you'll be able to figure that out is if you actually do too much, right? So don't be afraid of that process. Okay, let that dry. So after playing with this, oh, this is actually really cool. Letting them dry, going back over and adding more, you can actually take these and with an ink pen, you can actually do some doodling on them. So maybe you spend time doing these squares and rectangles, but then you want to put hearts in all of them. Go for it. Put another shape inside of them. Put a circle inside of them. Change up the shape. Create a new pattern. And these hearts are all going to be unique and different. But I'm just playing. And then maybe I add a border around each one or some of them. Or I change up the borders. Maybe on ones that don't have borders, what would happen if I just filled in the heart and it was all dark? And I did a random pattern that way. Again, there's no wrong ways to go with this. I want to do another one up here. So hopefully when you just start putting marks on the paper and shapes, and then you go to this doodle stage, you're getting more comfortable wandering and playing and just, I don't know, just trying things out. And soon maybe an hour goes by and you're like, wow, I've been doodling for that long. This could be a cute little bookmark. Or I can glue this onto a blank note card, a blank card, and turn it into a card, handmade card. So there's one doodle. I could also use a ballpoint pen and do more doodles. I could write words on here. Maybe I draw lines. And it is okay if you do something and you feel like you just ruined a little thing, because you can redo it. You get information about how you want to express yourself that way. You gotta be okay with ruining things or doing something you're like, that's pretty ugly. That turns out that is not okay. But that gives you information. And that's exactly, you're on the artist's journey when you're doing that. Maybe I turn this and I fill these with polka dots. Just dots. I'm filling that space. Think of a kid sitting down. You give them crayons, you give them pens, colored pencils, whatever, and they'll just start playing exactly like this. They are truly on the artist's journey. I'm gonna grab a bigger Sharpie and pick up speed with my dot making. If I am working on a piece like this and I reach a point where I don't know what to do next, put it aside and pick up another one and have at it. And maybe on this one, I want to outline some of these in black. It's still wet, so the ink pen is not really skipping. It's skipping quite a bit. Okay, but I'll add a new one, a new contrast one. Okay. Small ones. I'm just gonna keep adding layers. So have fun. Post some of your mark making and shapes and maybe layers. I think for this, I'm gonna go back over and add a cooler color. A cooler color would be like a green, blue, purple. See what happens. I'm not sure what I wanna do with these, but I see a lot of potential. You know, actually what would be kind of cool is if I just connected by a simple line. And I did that all the way across. I'm not sure what the final outcome will be, but I won't know unless I try it. Those look like little trees. But I think this might be a cool little pattern here. Anyway, I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to see what the final outcome would be, but I don't know, just follow your first whim, but don't judge it. Whether it's going to turn out good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's the journey, it's the process. Please post your little creations. Let me know how you're doing with playing with the media. And I can't wait to see your simple shapes, your mini canvases, your mark making. I want to see your messes. Again, mess making is part of this. Have fun.